Welcome to the Intellectual Freedom Podcast. Here we analyze politics, culture, technology, personal growth and development, and society at large through the lens of critical thinking and open-mindedness, not demagoguery and partisan hyperbole. I'm Dr. David Hopkins, humanities professor, your host and guide. So without further delay, let's get started. Welcome, everyone, and hope all is going well and you're having a happy, productive, and fulfilling day or evening whenever you might be listening to this. I have a real treat for you. When I requested Deborah to come on this podcast, I think the thing that really kind of captured my attention out of the gate is a headline I saw online, from CoverGirl to broke to grace. I mean, what a powerful statement there. So I think we can never learn enough from others who go through stuff and then they emerge on this other side, whether it's newfound knowledge or strength or courage or even just peace. But Miss Deborah Driggs, she's a cover girl. She's appeared on NBC, Oprah Network, Muscle and Fitness Magazine, Playboy, MTV, Park City Television. She's even been a moderator for CNN's Van Jones prison reform movement. She's been a member of the insurance industry's $1 Million Roundtable for many years, even appeared on the Howard Stern Show. And I see you're working on a book right now, Deborah, so you stay very busy. It's such a pleasure that you're taking some time out today to come speak with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for allowing me the time and having me. I don't take that for granted. What a gift that somebody wants to hear your story, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
So Deborah, why don't you just, give the listeners some background information about yourself, maybe where you came from, those early years, your formative years as you were growing up. Let's just start right there.
Where did I come from?
Yeah, right.
That's a whole hour show.
There you go.
Where did I come from? I don't know. I chose these two people that brought me to the planet Earth, and I had a lot of stuff to kind of redo in my life, I suppose, because the parents that I chose, really, I don't know if I came here to save them or what, but it's so interesting when people ask you that question, where did you come from? It's like really deep, profound. It's so profound. Where did you come from? Anyway, I was born in Oakland.
Okay.
I was born on the naval base in Oakland, California. And then I think 9 months later, we moved down to Southern California. And I grew up in the South Bay area. So Torrance, Hawthorne, Redondo Beach, that whole area. And that's where I grew up. And so I'm a Southern California girl. I'm a native Californian. Mm-hmm. And, but my family is kind of this spread out. I come from just kind of all diverse backgrounds. My mother's British. And so my mother was born in England. Her mother, complete Brit, and was a war bride, married my grandfather in London in 1940 something, right?
My goodness.
She got married at 17 and married my grandfather, who's from the Basque Country, and grew up in Delta, Florida on a beet farm. And
my goodness.
Was a Spanish family, and
right.
And so he joined the Army Corps, which then became the Air Force. Met my grandmother during World War II. So that's my mother's background. And then my father grew up in Moses Lake, Washington.
Oh.
It's a town this big.
Tiny, yeah. Never heard of Moses Lake, Washington.
It's a tiny farming town. And his father was a very famous farmer. And, potatoes and corn. He was awarded, the Corn King Award, and he also raised racehorses. So I had this very diverse family, and very interesting, just the whole dynamic of my family is very interesting. It's, there was a lot to learn for me as a kid, because my dad's dad divorced, which was unheard of. In the
then.
60s, nobody got divorced, and he divorced and remarried a widow with 3 daughters. So they were like the Brady Bunch. So my dad had 3 stepsisters and a real brother. And for me as a kid, trying to figure all that out was like, oh my God, who's who, what?
Right.
So I have this very crazy, diverse family. And so anyway, the one thing I will say is I did love going and visiting my family in Washington, because it brought out a different side of me. I got to go see how my grandfather was very popular in his town. Everybody knew him, Percy Driggs, he was like the mayor of the town. And so I got to go and see all his land and where he did his farming and the horses and everything. And that was just, for me, like I felt at home there. So it was really cool. I actually asked my parents at one point, I was like, why don't we live there? Because it just seemed like such a great life.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so that's where I grew up. I went to a private Catholic school. My dream as a kid was to be an ice skater.
Oh, really?
And I started ice skating very young. And then at some point it got to be that if I was going to take it seriously, I was going to skate before and after school.
Sure.
And so that was my life. Did that till about 14. My parents got divorced. And through them getting divorced, I lost my dream, which was skating, because the divorce, there was no money. It's interesting how that works. Together as a couple, they made just enough that we would get by, and there was money for me to skate. But then apart, they just couldn't manage, and so that really affected my sister and I, and it was just the 2 of us, my sister and I. And so I lost a lot of my confidence and my identity, because my whole identity was I got up and I skated. And I also lost a family, because I had 3 coaches by the time I stopped skating. And those 3 coaches were giving me those gems, those life lessons, those things that I wasn't really getting in my personal life. I was getting at the ice skating rink. And so that was really hard for me. I really missed that. I missed somebody pushing me and saying, you know what, you can do so much better.
Right.
And I wasn't getting that in my personal life. So that was a big loss.
Right. Yeah. Those coaches, those influencers at a young age, they get paid almost nothing to do what they do. And the power and the influence to change is incredible.
My God, if you get a good teacher, a good professor, a good coach, a good mentor, you hold on to that, because it's so powerful and that's kind of what I hope to do now, is kind of give this message of, don't wait till you're 57, my age, to really start to figure these things out. I didn't really ever take the time to sit and look at things deeply and in a different way. And so I think it's really good to latch on to anybody that's going to give you good advice, or that you see they're doing something that you want. I always say, don't take advice from people that don't have what you want.
Right.
They're not living the way you want to live. They're not making the money you want to make. They don't have the relationship you want. Take advice from people that have what you want.
Right.
And so that's and so that's kind of what I hope to do. But anyway, going back, so I go to high school, and I completely fall apart in high school and start going down the path of, partying a lot. And I had to work full time in high school because there was no money. And neither of my parents got divorced and went crazy because they were single, and they missed out. My mom was 19 when she had me.
Right.
And they missed out on dating and partying and all that. So they went crazy. Yeah. And so it was like I had no parental support, because they were off doing their thing. And so that's okay. That was their path and journey. It wasn't okay at the time, but now I look back and I can understand it better as an adult.
Right.
So how I got into modeling and being a spokesperson and cover girl and all of that, that part of my life was in 1983, I did a commercial for Japan. And I think I was also a professional cheerleader. And those things kind of perpetuated me into a business that I felt I was going to get attention. Because attention was like my first addiction as a young kid. I just really craved performing and getting attention. And so when I was a cheerleader, it was like fulfilling that need. It was like everybody's watching. And so it was no accident for me that I ended up in a business where more of that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of the questions I was wondering. What was that first thing in your youth? You're going through stuff. You're maybe not doing the right stuff that said, maybe what I need to do is I'm going to apply to be a cheerleader. What? So it was more just you had an empty spot, really, but
it was when I was really young and I was like, what? I know how I can get positive attention. I know how I can make people laugh. I was like, here, look at me, to try to divert from, the arguing that was going on or whatever negative was going on. I was always trying to
right.
Let's not focus on that. Hey, over here.
Yeah, let's not look internal. Let's go have fun doing this. So
that's really how I ended up. I think, I think my journey just took me on that path, and I loved it. I was good just doing commercials and industrial type work, and there was a show that I worked on, nobody will remember now, but it was called the Fashion Channel. And that was the first home shopping QVC. It was the Fashion Channel, and it ran 24 hours, and it was like, right when cable was really starting, those extra channels were starting, and before you got to 200, you know what I mean? Like now we've got like 900 channels.
Sure.
But this was before that. And so it was called the Fashion Channel, and I was a model on the show. And from doing that, I watched the women that were hosting the show, and I thought, I want to be doing that. And so, it's just like little things like that would happen along the way where I was just starting to kind of figure out where I fit in and where I was going to land.
Right.
And so I ended up, Playboy was kind of one of those things that was really interesting. I didn't really know much about Playboy except that it was a magazine. And because I was really young, my idea of Playboy was it was a magazine that featured nude women. And, I didn't really know anything about it. And so when my agent called me, I was already working, doing commercials, and I had two agents. I had a commercial agent, a print agent. And my print agent called me, and her name was Vivian. And she said, Playboy's coming out with a book called The Book of Lingerie, and they want to see you about being on the cover.
Wow.
And of course, my first question was, well, is there nudity? And I don't think so. This is for the cover. And so I go to the famous building on Sunset, which, I had driven by 1,000 times. It was an eyesore. It was iconic. And so I go to the building, and I remember signing in, and they said, we'll take you back and you'll put a robe on, and then they take you in the studio to do a Polaroid. And I said, put a robe on. And they said, yeah, we need to see your body. And I'm like, no, I'm not here for that. I'm here for the da-da-da. And so that's how the whole go see call went. It didn't really start off great. So I'm 25.
Sure.
Don't really know, or I'm already a little intimidated by my surroundings. I'm in the Playboy building.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And so I left my undergarments on. I go in, the photographer's like, well, I need to see your whole body. Now, to put that in perspective, back then it was a different world. This was 1989, and they were looking for tattoos, piercings, birthmarks, scars, anything anything that they would have to work with.
That probably was even taboo, even for Playboy back then. Yeah,
It absolutely was. And that's just how it was in 1989. Today, nobody cares about any of that.
Oh,
but
yeah.
back then, that was a big, that
Sure.
took into account whether or not you were going to get the job. So I did the audition and I left, and I thought, well, that didn't go very well. And I got a call that afternoon that they wanted to test me to be a centerfold. And
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. I literally said on the phone, I said, I think you're confusing me with somebody else. I did not see myself that way.
Right.
So cut to, I do the magazine. I end up being the centerfold for March 1990. And that just took me on a whole other path, because now everybody wanted to meet me. I got booked on the Oprah Winfrey Show. I ended up doing the Bob Hope special, and it just was like a whirlwind. And I think the reason why I had so much immediate success is that I had been preparing since 1983 for this moment, not knowing that. I wasn't smart enough to know that that was the deal, but I had been preparing because I had already done commercials. I'd already worked on the Fashion Network. I had already kind of grinded in getting a SAG card and doing bit parts on. I'd done bit parts on different pilots, and so I was ready when Playboy came around, and when they kind of threw me out into all these different things, I was a little bit more ahead of the game. And so then that landed me on Playboy's Hot Rocks, which was a new music show. And I became their first VJ. And so it was kind of like that. That was my beginning. And then, going, having that beautiful, time in the entertainment world. I got, in 92, I ended up getting married, and I started a family. And in 1998, I did a pilot. Actually, I did a TV show called Nightstand, and there was a lot of dialogue for me. And I remember working on that show, and I had 3 babies at home, and I just thought, this is it. I can't keep up anymore. And so I just started, I thought, I'm going to be a full-time mom. And so, and then cut to in 2004, I got
Deborah, can I ask you something before you go there? Because I have something really, really curious. The 80s, when you were early 90s, totally different world when you talk Playboy and geez, the world that you see with the pornography. I mean, it's just 25 years later, a whole lot of stuff different. But can I ask you, how did your family or your friends react, when you did that? I mean, did you feel the stigma? It was a different era back then. And how did you react to that? Or how did they react to it?
I think to be really honest and transparent about this, it's really hard for me now, because it seems like, that's 30 years ago.
Right.
And it was a different world, and I was a different person. And so from what I can remember, my friends and family were all like, okay, it didn't seem out of the ordinary for my life, because I think they were prepared. It wasn't like I lived in a small town and came to LA and became a centerfold. That might be a little bit different, but I was already living in North Hollywood. I was already doing commercials. And so I think because I was already kind of doing stuff, that it wasn't a surprise. It wasn't like, oh my gosh. It wasn't just like
a bomb didn't drop.
It wasn't a huge bomb. It was kind of like another job that I got.
Yeah.
And so, but now to talk about the stigma, there were, it wasn't all roses. I mean, there were a lot of, before Playboy, I was doing a lot of jobs that were very, I was in the Sunday paper, doing a Macy's ad, or, like The Girl Next Door. And I wasn't getting those jobs anymore. And so there was definitely, a lot of the accounts that would hire me, that I had built up to, weren't interested anymore. And that was okay. And this is where it happens, where one door shuts, 10 more open.
Yeah.
And these were different doors now that were opening. And all of a sudden I was launched into the sexy girl role, which was funny for me because I was playing all the funny stuff before that. And so now I was launched into something different. And
right.
But yeah, there were a lot of people that poo-pooed it or,
right. Well, so the fame had to be kind of crazy. The first time you really have, I've never had fame, probably never. It's hard to fathom that moment. Is there a moment like where you were kind of blown away of the recognition and the fame? Like, is this like really my life? Did you have one of those moments? Yeah. What was that?
Yeah. I would say that it wasn't the centerfold that did it for me. It was the cover. Because I looked more like myself on the cover and that time. And so the cover really, that changed things quite a bit. And I remember people coming up to me going, "Are you on the cover of Playboy?" Like this, because I didn't really tell, my roommates knew and, people close to me knew, but, people that I interacted with would be like, is that, and so but also it didn't last long because I didn't stay long in that world.
Right.
You know what I mean? I didn't stay in the Playboy world that long.
Right.
So it didn't last for me like it does for some of the other girls that like Pam Anderson, who did 20 covers and, I just didn't, I tried to move away. And, it's a really hard thing to navigate the entertainment world. And, it's interesting now. I understand it more now. Obviously, it's the way life is about branding and marketing and all of that. And at the time, I didn't understand it. But in some way, I kind of intuitively knew because I kept saying, I want to move away from playing the sexy part and move into. And so because of that, because I was moving away and I was studying acting, I was in a 2-year Meisner program and I started getting the auditions that were more away from the Playboy stereotype. And so I started getting called in for pilots and funny roles. And I started doing comedy and things that I thought I was right for. And so, intuitively, I kind of knew how to do that, but I was young. And so I didn't really know how to map it out completely. And, and it's really hard too, when you have people around you going, well, you should just do this. You know what I mean?
Everybody's got the right answer for you.
Everybody's
always do.
So, and then of course there's always the problem of needing money, and so you end up taking a job that you probably wouldn't take.
Sure.
I did a lot of B movies just because I needed the money to sustain myself to keep staying in. Yeah.
So now you're married. Sorry to interrupt you there, but I just had some questions.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah. So you're married, you have the kids, you're starting to question whether this is where I really want to be and that sort of thing. So, pick up from there and tell me what happened after the kids and the family.
Well, I think what would really support your viewership is, what do you do when you lose everything?
Right.
And that happened to me. And I, never really prepared or saw that coming. I found myself 40 years old, 3 young kids, and I got really scared. That doesn't leave ever. You remember those certain things that happen that kind of, they're either going to do one or two things. They're going to shut you down or they're going to make you go forward. And for me, it kind of shut me down for a while because I got super scared. I thought, well, who am I now? If I'm not married, if I'm not the actress, if I'm not the this, and I have 3 kids and I needed to work and I really didn't know what to do. And I remember that one of the first jobs I took was I was a substitute teacher in the school district where we lived. And I did that for a while. And then I ended up working in special ed, but there was not enough money, and I needed to make more money. And so I just kept moving forward. And then I worked in a spa. I did all these, anybody that is listening is going to go, yeah, I've been there. I've done that, where you just take all these different jobs. And then finally I landed in real estate and I got my real estate license and I was starting to get my confidence back. And I was starting to feel, okay, I'm actually smart. I passed my real estate test and I started working with a team that was really successful. And I said, I don't want to start my own business. I'd rather just be your assistant and learn from the best. And I was smart enough to know to do that. And so I found this really great team that I worked with. And we had a great run. I mean, we started doing really well. And in 2008, as we know, that took a little bit of a turn. Absolutely. Because I raised my kids in Park City, Utah. And so it was a small second home environment. And so I worked in the second home, multi-million luxury home, environment. And that was the first thing to go. And so here I am again. Now what? Now what do you do? And then I just really took a dive into depression. And, I ended up doing a stint, in rehab for 3 months for depression, because I really just thought, what's the point? I got to that point where I was like, what's the point of, nothing's working out. I have 3, I can't support my kids. I felt like such a failure that it was like, what's the point of this? And then, it's like that saying in Castaway where he says, you never know what the tide's going to bring in.
Right.
You get to that lowest point and then you never know what's going to come up next. And, I ended up going to Ocala. I'm living with my mom. I'm like 46 years old and I'm living with my mother. I mean, it's like, how low can you go,
Right.
And my kids have to go they're going to go live with their dad now. And they didn't want to leave me. And I didn't have the money or the means to support them anymore. So I started over and I got a job in New York working for a print procurement company. This was after many applications. This was after working on a boat. I worked on a boat just to make some money.
Right.
I did dog work. I mean, I was like, it was
whatever you had to do.
Whatever I had to do. And so I ended up working for this company in New York. And then things really started to turn around because I had this land in my lap and it was like a gift. It was through a friend, that offered me this opportunity. And you know what? It was a gift. And I thought, this is my time right now. If I'm going to pull it together, I have to do whatever it takes right now. And, because what were my choices at this point? I was like, this is it. I don't know. There was something inside of me that was like, go for it big, fail big. Who cares? Just do it. And so I called every single person I know. And I had so many people, it's funny when you actually ask for the help and you get really congruent with whatever it is that you feel passionately about. And all of a sudden people were willing to help. And I said, look, all I want is if you could just introduce me to the head of procurement at your business. And if they would just take a meeting with me, one meeting. And that's how I built my business in that business. And what's really beautiful about it is that even though I didn't build a career in procurement, I still honestly to this day can't even tell you what procurement is. What I can tell you is I am a phenomenal networker. And I would put myself in a place or at a table where I would network to the next thing I knew, I had a meeting with Revlon. And that was what I was good at. It wasn't so much that I understood procurement or print, but I understood how to network and how to get meetings and build relationships.
Right. Deborah, that just brings something to my mind that I talk about in my classroom a lot about. You may say it might have been luck, but the fact is you just jumped in and did it. And so many people get saddled with self-doubt, like, oh, there's no way I could just call up people and ask for that one meeting, or no way I can go to that networking guy. I'm too shy, I'm not smart enough, I don't speak well enough, I'm an introvert, whatever the thing might be. But it's so important to you will never succeed if you don't. You got to jump over something. At some point, you just have to do it, or you're just going to stay in exactly the same spot. Because the reality is, so many people like me, or even yourself, there's people that get stuck in the same job forever and ever, and they just keep wandering from this, that, but because they won't take that step to go forward.
It's interesting. I wrote a blog. I don't remember the name of which I've written over 52 blogs. Mm-hmm. And so one of the blogs I wrote, and it might be in my self-doubt, it's called self-doubt. It might be that blog, because I said, isn't it amazing that the statistics show 80% of human beings in a job want to leave that job and only 1% will.
Oh, it's stunning. Yeah, I've seen numbers.
Stunning.
Yeah.
It's so stunning to me. And I say this all the time. I tell my kids, when their friends, sometimes their friends ask me, for advice or an opinion about something. And I go, 80% of anything you do is showing up. 80%. If you think about that.
Absolutely.
That is a staggering number. 80% of anything you do. I don't care if you're a professor like what you do. I don't care if you're a writer. I don't care if you walk dogs.
Right.
80% is showing up. The 20% is what you know.
Right.
And if you can just wrap your head around that, especially at a young age, if you can get this at a young age and wrap yourself around that and understand that it is all about just showing up is half the battle.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. I can't remember. I was talking to a small business owner down here in Tampa, and, labor's really tight everywhere. And
you live near my mother.
Yeah. I'm in Tampa. Yeah.
My mother lives in Ocala. So yeah. When I fly to visit her, I fly into Tampa.
You know what I know of Ocala best is the horse farms. My goodness. Gorgeous up there.
I told her, I said, I'm getting close to retiring in Ocala with you.
There you go. I mean, just some of those horse farms are
beautiful.
Unbelievable. But this business owner, I asked him, about what was going on. He said, the one thing I need more than anything is just people to show up. He said, I'll pay money for people who will just consistently. It's crazy how simple. It's too simple to be true, but it is really.
Well, we complicate it.
Yeah.
We complicate it. So I wrote, like I said, and you can go to my website. I've written 52 blogs. Like I said, that was my goal, to write a blog a week for a year. So I'm on, I think we're on week 14.
Okay.
But one of the blogs that I just wrote, it's posted, is all about doubting yourself. Mm-hmm. And I go into self-doubt all the time. Listen, I write blogs. If somebody would have told me 10 years ago, you're going to be writing blogs and you're going to write a book, I would have said, you're crazy. I don't write.
Right.
Today, I write.
Right.
Not only do I write for my website, I've written blogs for other people's websites.
Yep.
And it's because I show up.
Yep. And the other thing that'll happen, your last ones, the week 52, are going to be 1,000,000 times better than the first ones, but you just have to start, and you just build skill, and you build it.
Listen, you just have to start are the key. It's key. You just have to start. And here's the greatest thing. So we're going completely off, but I don't care.
Oh, no, that's totally.
So I started writing these blogs, not knowing anything. I don't know anything about SEO or, searching engines, and I'm learning about social media. I'm way behind on the 8 ball with all of this, but I'm learning. Mm-hmm. And so I had a marketing meeting this morning, and we went in and we took one of my blogs and we redid it in the format that really shows up better on the internet. So for example, if you type, all this, if you type in a word, I want my blog to show up.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how that works. I just write blogs.
Right.
I'm not a marketing, online marketing person, but I learned today because I showed up.
Yep. And you'll learn how to embed those in your writing better and better. And
exactly. But if I didn't show up to the meeting, I wouldn't have I would have said, oh, somebody else can do it. And that's the mindset that's shifted for me. And it's taken years, is that, yes, I show up for everything. I show up for everything because I never know where the idea is going to come from or where the next gig is going to be. You don't know.
Sure. And so some people would call that you were lucky. Others would say you showed up a whole lot of times and you happened to be there right when that opportunity. So a lot of haters or self-doubters. Deborah's just lucky. She's just been a beautiful model. Of course, it's easy for her, right? And that. But we do that.
Tell that to Deborah when she was sitting in lockdown in a crazy ward because I couldn't figure out my life. It's like I was at the very bottom. So when I speak now, or when I talk and I tell my story and I share my experience, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I modeled. I still went through the mud. I still went through times that were so hard.
Right.
So hard.
Yeah.
It was like I couldn't see my way out of the paper bag. And by the way, do these things happen today? Does stuff come up? Absolutely.
Always.
This is life. It goes like this, right? And so, but here's the great news. Mm-hmm. And this is what I want your listeners to go, oh, and have that aha moment. Okay, so here it is. You don't have to go into these dark times like I did without any tools. You don't have to.
Right.
You don't have to grind it out. You don't have to suffer. You can actually, today, everything is accessible. 15 years ago, not so much. But today, oh my God, you could go online and type in whatever it is you're having a struggle with, and you'll get all this advice.
Yep.
It's up to you to use it, but you don't have to. So if you prepare now, especially if you're young, if you're in college, mm-hmm. or you're just starting out in a career, and you prepare now, if you say to yourself, okay, I graduated college, things look really good. Got my first internship. I know what I want to do, but let's just say 10 years from now, that all goes to shit.
Mm-hmm.
It all goes out.
And it does sometimes.
And it will.
Yep.
The world is changing rapidly right now, as we all know. So a lot of jobs are going to be out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, drivers, out. A lot of the transportation world is changing. Car business, changing. Money business, changing. Medical business, changing. Yep. Robotics coming in. A lot of things are changing. So if you prepare yourself in the beginning and you start at a very young age and you say, you know what if, it's a great question. What if my career only has a 10-year life? What would my backup plan be?
Right.
And everybody should have a backup plan.
Right.
And that would save so much suffering. So you know how in the entertainment world, I used to get this all the time when I was in my 20s and I was doing commercials, and people would literally say this to me. And when you're young, you can't hear it. Mm-hmm. But they would literally say to me all the time, well, what's your backup plan?
Don't have one.
And by the way, if somebody would have said it to me a little differently, like, have you ever thought about what life would be like if you weren't an actress?
Right.
Different, same question, but different approach. And I think it's really important if people can say to themselves, have I ever thought about what life would be like if what I do wasn't really necessary in 10 years? For example, people that do x-rays or, that we all know that that's going into, robotics are taking that over. So you're not going to need a lot of manpower, that those jobs are not going to be so much.
Right.
So you might not want to study that in medical school. You might want to go down a different path. It's like knowing what's coming in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, having foresight.
Right.
So for anybody, and preparing. And when you use those tools and you prepare, I think there's less chance of going down a rabbit hole and suffering because you're prepared. I never had a backup plan.
Right.
That's all that really happened to me.
Right.
The story's different now for me. At the time I thought I was dying.
Right.
But you know what I mean? But the truth of the matter is, and the story really is, I didn't have a backup plan. I didn't have any type of support system in place that, oh my God, what if I got divorced? And now I don't want to say you don't want to, you want to be smart. I mean, I'm not a pessimist. You don't go into
you don't want to be idealistic.
You don't go into a marriage. Hey, by the way, what are we going to do if we get a divorce?
Right.
But it wouldn't be such a horrible idea to go, in the event, I don't want to be completely stuck in a situation where I can't lose myself.
Right. Right.
And I think sometimes that's what happens in the world, is that we lose ourselves in jobs, in relationships with no backup.
Right. Yeah. And I think when we're young, we think we're 18 and bulletproof, that nothing's ever going to happen to us no matter what. But, having that backup plan, it doesn't mean you don't chase that immediate goal and dream and ambition. So if I got a college student who wants to be a nurse, hey, go for it. But hey, it doesn't hurt. It only expands your perspective and your intellect and your knowledge of what's going on around in the world to prepare yourself for other contingencies. That's what money managers do all the time. They hope to make money, but
it's like a puzzle. They're constantly looking to see where things can be better fit. And the other, the greatest entrepreneurs, and I have that entrepreneurial spirit, the greatest entrepreneurs are constantly, never ending, innovating.
Right.
They're constantly innovating, and they're not emotionally attached to the company or the brand or the relationship. Entrepreneurs are visionaries. They're leaders. Right. And so managers and CEOs, they get very emotional about the company and saving the company. And entrepreneurs are like, sell it and do this, And so there's a different mindset.
Right.
And so, to be a really good entrepreneur is to be a really good leader and to see that this is what's coming down, and it's really, this is where entrepreneurial spirits get crushed, is because the people around them can't see it.
Right. Right. Excellent.
And when they can't see it, then that can kind of make an entrepreneur doubt themselves. And that's so horrible because they're the real leader. Right.
Right.
But good entrepreneurials, they see it. They see what's coming. They know what's coming ahead. They know how the industries are changing. They know that the medical world is changing. They know that the financial world is changing, and they're preparing.
Right.
And that's really why you have kids that quit school. And, like we hear this all the time. This person quit school, has no education, and built this company. It's not so much that they quit school is the story. The story really is that they saw a vision, they're a leader, and they have an entrepreneurial spirit.
Right.
And there's no education really. And you probably, I don't know if you agree with me or not, you're a professor that can teach that.
No, so education can be great for many people, but when you look at entrepreneurs, business, I mean, many of the most successful don't have a college degree, or never. Bill Gates, one example, just a towering figure, obviously. uh, it's definitely not uncommon, because learning in a school is one thing, and in general, people who get a degree are going to do better than those who don't. But if you're an entrepreneur, maybe one of the best things you can do is just get out there and bust it, because
Yeah.
if that's your thing. And there's
It's
always a balance. There's always things you can learn in college, how to do the
yeah,
book, how to finance, how economics and all that stuff. But at the
yeah.
same time, like you say, those entrepreneurs that are successful, you can't teach that in college.
No, you cannot. And so my top three things are:
Mm-hmm.
don't worry about having a purpose, have a backup plan, have a toolbox, and practice being consistent. Because consistency is what's going to save anybody through a dark time.
Right.
If you can just be consistent, I have a few things in my day that they're non-negotiables. These are things that have to take place in my day,
Mm-hmm.
because it helps me to stay consistent and stay in line on what I'm doing. If I'm not consistent, then my brand's not going to be consistent.
Right. So give us a flavor. What is it? The typical day in the life. What does that look like? So people can have a flavor, because obviously you've been successful at this, for
And
many years.
this is something that is, it took me a lot of years to learn too.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's trial and error. You figure it out after so many failures for me, that were for me, being in a dark time just is preparing me for some type of growth.
Right.
That's where the spiritual growth is going to happen, is when you're in something that feels like a failure, or it's dark, or it's not really where you want to be.
Right.
But right there, I'm like, oh, here we go. Here's the growth. This is getting ready to happen. Or if something doesn't go my way today, I go, well, that just means something's about to happen. And that's really the truth about that. So my day typically starts out at the same time and ends at the same time.
Okay.
So I like those two components right off the bat. So I get up anywhere between 6 and 7 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really a morning person, so that was probably the hardest one for me. Like today, I had an 8 a.m. I had a marketing team meeting, and it's a 2-hour meeting. And for me to be there at 8 o'clock, I have to get up at 6, because I have to prepare.
Right.
So, and when I say prepare, that's like, I have my hot water with lemon.
Mm-hmm.
I do all my little rituals. I get a little bit of prayer and meditation. I maybe read something inspirational, so that I start off in a good place.
Right. Absolutely.
Because I'm a person that goes right into crushing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's just my nature. I just want to crush it.
Right.
And so I have to do the contrary action to that, and start out in a relaxing way.
Okay.
And that's very contrary to how I would want to do things. So I have to practice that every morning. So that's how I start my day.
Okay.
And then, I have my meetings. I like to get my meetings out of the way in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like to get either a yoga class or a hike, or just go for a 45-minute walk.
Right.
I don't need to do anything rough. I am 57 years old. I'm going to be 58. I don't want any injuries at this point in my life. I'm all good. I did all that athletic stuff. I've hit most of my athletic goals, really. So I don't need to do anything hardcore at this point in my life. I like to sit in silence a lot. And then I put aside a good hour every day where I write. Now, whether I write a blog, sometimes I just riff.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I just journal. I never know what I'm going to write about. And by the way, I also don't reread what I write. So once I write it, and then I send it to a woman who checks spelling and grammar. She doesn't rewrite it either. And then we send it to my marketing team, and we then create a flyer or whatever to create it into a blog. So that's kind of my process with that. I have 3 books that I'm working on that are coming out next year.
Nice.
One is now in the actual, it's getting very close to being published.
Okay.
It's gone through all the editing phases. And now we're at the point where we're picking cover, interior design.
Oh boy, yeah, you're getting close then, aren't you?
We're getting very close. And
Yep.
this is a book that my grandfather, my mother's father, wrote. It's called Son of a Basque. And it's a historical nonfiction, historical fiction.
Wow.
Based on his life. Characters are changed. And so we, being that he's no longer with us and my grandmother's no longer with us, my mother and I had to make a lot of the editing changes because, there's always going to be mistakes in a book. And so we had to make those changes. And, and so I'm going to be promoting the book and I'm self-publishing it. I formed my own publishing company.
Nice.
Because I decided that if I'm going to do all the work and selling it, I might as well publish the book.
Get all the profit.
So it's been a great learning year for me this year. I've gone through so many, talk about ups and downs and like, do I really want to do this? Am I, then my mind trying to talk me out of it.
Right.
Then I have to go back and read one of my blogs and go, yeah, you wrote about this mindset thing. You might want to reread that.
Right.
And so, I got to walk my own talk and it's really not, it's hard.
Right.
Right. I go through everything that everybody else is feeling. And so I hope that comes through when people read my blogs. I hope they go, oh yeah, she's like me. Like I get that, And so that's kind of what's going on. My website has all this information.
Yeah. Do you even want to give it right now, Deborah? Just get it out there so everybody.
It's my name. It's DeborahDriggs.com.
Yeah. And everybody too, when I send this out, you can click on her link. I'll have it posted below.
Yeah. So it's my website. There's 14 blogs up. I write a blog a week. So,
yeah.
And then what I'm going to do, I decided this last night, actually, is I'm going to take every single blog for 52 weeks and make a coffee table book and just have it be Deb's Den.
Oh, neat.
And all the blogs will be printed with the beautiful flyers that we've created. I'm like, if we've gone to all this work, we might as well make it a coffee table book. And so, so there's all these, this is what happens when you get up at 6 a.m. and you go to these meetings,
Yeah. It's fascinating what you say, because I recently wrote you have a perfect model all the way back to the ancient Greeks, mind, body, spirit. You wake up early, because successful people almost always get up early, and they don't go rush and slam 3 cups of coffee and run out the door to McDonald's. They sit, they read, they meditate, or they pray. They get their mind right before the day starts. They attack the day, but somewhere in there they get physical activity, because the mind and the body are connected inextricably. And successful people almost invariably understand that connection, because you have to move the body. Like you said, it can be so simple as a walk or a hike, but you won't operate optimally if you don't do,
I suggest too that everybody kind of take a piece of paper and draw a circle and make a pie chart, to create the balance in your life. So for me, my balance was so far off. So anything that I talk about, I talk from my experience of things that I did wrong and I failed at, right? I failed poorly at having balance.
Right.
I was doing really great. Like I used to do all this crazy adventure racing and I was physically in the best shape of my life, but my relationships were suffering.
Mm-hmm.
My financial world was suffering. My spiritual life was suffering. So it's having, and that if you get that early on in life, that's what I'm saying. If you get the tools and you do this balance and you have all your areas, where you go, okay, where am I putting some energy towards my finances? Am I putting energy towards my relationships? What does all that look like?
Yes. Yep. No doubt.
And for me, it's still a work in progress. I still go, oh God, I'm not giving this enough attention.
Yeah.
Because my personality is that of, if I'm going to create something, I put all the eggs in that basket. And that's good, but it's also taking away from the other part of my pie.
Right.
And so then being aware of that, I can go, okay, I haven't been on a hike in a week.
Mm-hmm.
You go get in nature and get back in balance. And so, but see, the thing is that it takes a while to become aware of that.
Right.
And once there's an awareness, it's really easy to sit and not be so set in the mind, in the head, because once you get in the head, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead, looking at your chart and going, what part of my chart am I missing? Because that's what's going on.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So Deborah, I think maybe that might be a great place for us to stop, because you have given us so much. And everyone, you need to check out Deborah's stuff online, because, it's too easy. Sometimes we see on the external someone who has been famous like Deborah and in the modeling world, and it's all so easy, and she must have had everything just handed to her on a silver platter. Well, no, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't. And we can all learn so much from your story, Deborah, and I appreciate again immensely you taking the time to come out on my show today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the podcast today. I so hope you found value in the topic today. Every single day, if we can expand our perspective just a little bit on any range of topic, whether it be about our physical body, intellectual sharpness and perspective, or spiritual growth, then if we stay consistent in the long run, we all become more well-rounded people able to cope with all manner of events in life. I always appreciate you clicking like or follow to this podcast. Generally, a new episode is published every single week. And please, if you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear about them. With that, I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week until we talk again.